Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. This card today is to show you how to do some partial die cutting of letters without having the dies that kind of do it all for you. So I'll start with cutting down a panel. I cut down all of my card panels to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. So I'm taking this one today and taking it down to 4 by 5 1/4 inches, just so that it will have a nice border all around. I'm going to start off with this alphabet die here. Now, any alphabet dies are obviously going to work, and my sentiment is going to say best wishes. And it is going to be inside this octagon shape here. Now, it's kind of going to be half of the octagon. So I've put down a little bit of low-tack tape, and then I'm going to organize my letters nice and straight. And I am doing it inside of the octagon, however, the obvious way to do it would be to put down the letters first and then line up the shape around it. And that's what I do end up doing in the end, but just saying. So I will line this all up. Now I want this to be nice and even, and I've got this nice big bit of tape here so that I can put it nice and evenly over my card. So I want to die cut only half of this. I don't want the letters to be completely die cut out. So this is the important part here. When you put on your top cutting plate, you only want it to cut halfway. So your machine will only cut where there is pressure, downward pressure. So if we only put the plate halfway, you can see that things will just hold on to there at the bottom. So that was what I was going for. I don't want it to be completely cut through. Once I gently remove all of the dies, I'm going to take a craft knife and just finish off those last little bits there so that it all comes free. So I'm just using a metal edged ruler, and then I can take all of those bits out and you can see it says best. And of course, this doesn't just have to be alphabet dies. This can be any die and then any shape or anything surrounding it, or border dies. Go for gold and have a play. See what you have in your stash. I'm going to use a couple of colors here of Distressed Oxide inks, but I want the main color to be the chipped sapphire, the nice dark color. Now, I will tell you right here that this card took many twists and turns and is not at all what I was planning. So if I had been planning this, I would have used watercolor cardstock as my base here. I wasn't planning it, so I didn't use it, and so I do have to be careful here about how much water I am adding to this Nina Solar White 80-pound paper. It can withstand up to a little bit of water, but just not a lot. Now here's where I was having a little bit of fun. You can see I have this Cosmic Shimmer texture paste there on the right, and the BoBunny stencil paste on the left, which is, the BoBunny one is a kind of opaque gold color, and the one on the right is more of a clear, shiny, glittery paste. So I really like these both individually, and they have really good uses individually. However, I wondered what would happen if I put them both together so that I could get a glittery gold stencil paste. So I'm going to add a little bit of each one on my non-stick mat here. This is just a craft mat. This is the replacement mat for the glass media mat from Tim Holtz. However, I don't have the glass media mat. I just really like the size and the fact that the underside is kind of non-slip on this mat, so it works out perfect for me. So this is what they look like individually if they were both dried, and then this is what they look like together. And I quite like the look, so I thought I would mix them up and use them on my project today. So have a play with these stencil pastes and texture pastes and all of those different things that you have in your stash. I have got some little foliage dies here, and I'm just going to use a piece of cardstock. Now this is a very temporary measure, don't get me wrong. You could do this into some acetate and that would last longer, or some sort of plastic sheeting or covering would last much longer. However, I just was doing what was quickest here, and I didn't have any acetate to hand, so I was using some cardstock to create a stencil for these leaves. Now, as I said, you may already have a stencil in your stash that would be perfect for this, and you don't have to create your own, but I am just extending the use of my dies, and I will use them as some stencils here. Now my background is all nice and dry, but I did want to add a little bit of a kind of border, a darker border there, so I'm just coming in with the same chipped sapphire that I used on the actual card front, and a finger dauber to kind of add a little bit of a faded border, just again so it adds a little bit more definition. But this is just an extra step that you don't necessarily have to do either. And you could use anything to blend these on, some cotton balls or some mini ink blending tools, but I find the finger daubers a really good size for doing this sort of thing. And then I am just going over and kind of getting rid of some of the little white spots because I didn't want any white showing through. Then I have the word wishes here cut out of the same alphabet die. Now I'm using some temporary adhesive here because this was not my plan at all. These were really just going to be placeholders. This was not where I was going with this card again. So I'm going to pop these down where I want them to go, and I'm not worried if they get anything on them or anything because, as I said, these are just placeholders at the moment. Here is my DIY stencil and the paste that we just made up. And all I'm going to do is pop these all around the outside. I really like the gold for this because it shows up so well against that nice blue background. And as I said, I kind of tried it out to see how it would end up drying, and I really liked the slightly more opaque glittery version rather than using them separately or individually. Now I'm going to pop these all over my card front, but if you didn't feel like doing all of this, then you could definitely skip all of these steps and just use some patterned paper or some really simple paper. It's funny because sometimes in card making, I feel like we have time to do these things ourselves and do it all from scratch and really enjoy the process and get out some things that we maybe haven't used for a little while. And other times I need the quick and easy option, and I really have an idea in my head that I just want to make happen nice and fast. So whatever works for you. Now I have cut apart the stencil here because obviously the paste is still wet. I'm trying to do this all in one go, so it was definitely easier just to cut this down. And as I said, I don't intend on reusing these, although if I let the stencil paste harden, it may make them a lot more durable. But anyhow, I guess for this one my intention wasn't to reuse them, but that's okay. You do need to remember that whilst this paste is wet, it looks a lot more matte and not as shiny or anything. So you can see here that this is what it looks like while the paste is still wet. And that was why I did a sample test of what would happen if I mixed them together and let them dry before I started this card, because I wanted to make sure that it would come out as I was intending it to. So here it is all nice and dry, and you can see it has a lot more shine to it now, which is perfect for what I wanted. As I said, this card was a real journey and took a lot of twists and turns. This was not going to be a shaker card at all. I had no intention of making a shaker card, but here it is, and I'm going to add some acetate onto the back of my little cutout shape there. So you can see that I made sure to add a little bit to the letters as well so that they were nice and glued down onto the acetate. And then using some foam tape, I have added it all around the outside of my shape. And I'm going to add in two different colors here, obviously the blue and the gold, because they are the colors that I have used on my card. And these are kind of like tiny little gems. They create a really nice shaker sound. And then I'm going to remove some of the foam tape, just the top foam tape, so that I can put a backing piece on here first. Now it's just going to do that much, but I realized I may as well take off all of those top bits because that was going to be behind the piece that I had cut. And then that way everything is nice and trapped. This was a busy enough shaker card, and I wanted to make sure the best part that is in blue, the words at the front, stood out enough, so a white background was fine here. I will add this onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base. It is a 110 pound Nina Solar white card base. And then remember when I just temporarily adhered down all of those letters in the word wishes? Well, I still wasn't sure what to do, but I quite liked the white in the end. I was thinking I would have a dark blue, or I would die cut some out from the gold. However, I ended up just really liking the white, and I feel like it kind of brought it all together and was coordinating with the frame that is on the outside of the card and the backing to the shaker part, so I quite liked the white. So all I did, because the letters were actually in perfect condition, is added some liquid glue, and that finished off my card. So after a lot of twists and turns, this is my card for today, using some partial die cutting to create those letters hanging off the rest of the card. Thank you so much for joining me, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye!